All right, so Hurricane Helene, right? It's got everyone talking, and you're here because you want to go deeper than the headlines. You want the need-to-know info straight from the sources so you can actually, make some decisions.
Exactly.
So we've been all over it, USA Today, Newsweek, Yahoo News, and let me tell you this Helene thing. It's shaping up to be a real monster storm.
Yeah, no, you're right to be concerned. And what's got everyone particularly on edge is how quickly this thing is gaining steam. We're not talking about your average hurricane here. This one's being juiced up by something we haven't really seen before, crazy high water temperatures in the Gulf.
Okay, so not just like a hot summer day in Florida, this is different. How hot are we talking, and why does it even matter for a hurricane like...
Helene.
Yeah, Helene.
Think of the Gulf of Mexico like a giant bathtub, and someone just cranked the water heater up to 11. Especially this current, the loop current. It's like a fire hose of warm water flowing right through the Gulf. And this heat, that's pure fuel for a hurricane.
So Helene is basically parked right over a giant, it's a good analogy, like a giant energy drink for hurricanes.
Oh, I like that. And it's guzzling it down, getting bigger and stronger by the minute. See, that heat transfers from the water into the atmosphere, and it basically supercharges the hurricane's engine. And that makes it way more intense and honestly harder to predict.
And it sounds like the folks in charge are taking this pretty seriously, too. You don't see a state of emergency declared every time a little wind kicks up, do you?
Not at all. Governor DeSantis has already called a state of emergency for 41 counties along Florida's Gulf Coast. We're talking Tampa, St. Pete, even all the way over to the Big Bend area. This isn't just a precaution. It means they're expecting a real wallop from Helene. And that means everyone in its path needs to be ready.
Okay, so no messing around with Helene. Got it. Now, we know it's supposed to make landfall, what is it, Thursday?
Right.
But a hurricane's impact isn't limited to that one day, right?
Yeah.
What's this week going to look like for folks in Helene's path?
Right. It's not just a one-day thing at all. We're already starting to see the effects. Even now, Helene's outer bands are brushing up against the coast, bringing some rain and wind. And those conditions, well, they're only going to get worse as we get closer to Thursday.
So by, Wednesday, what are folks looking at?
Wednesday. Yeah, you're looking at full-on hurricane force winds. Heavy, heavy rain. And that storm surge, that's going to be a major factor along the coast.
Okay, yeah, let's talk about that for a sec, this whole storm surge thing. I think it's one of those things a lot of people hear about during hurricane season, but they don't really, get it. What does it actually mean for someone who might be in its path?
Think of it this way. It's not just the rain, right? You've got this wall of water, could be as high as a two-story building, being pushed onto land by the sheer force of the hurricane. Millions of tons of water just surging inland, taking out anything in its way.
Yikes. It's like the ocean just said, I'm coming in, and decided to crash the party. But it's not just water coming in with that surge, is it?
Oh, no, not at all. You've got debris in there, downed power lines. Who knows what else got swept up in it. Incredibly destructive and, frankly, pretty terrifying to see firsthand.
And we're seeing some pretty big numbers being thrown around for Helene's surge potential. What's the worst-case scenario here, and where are the areas that are most at risk?
Well, the models are projecting a max surge of up to 15 feet near where Helene is expected to make landfall. And that looks to be somewhere around Taylor and Dixie counties. But hold on, even areas farther south, like Tampa Bay, they could still see a surge of 6 to 8 feet.
6 to 8 feet of water on top of normal tide levels. That's a lot of water.
It is, and people need to understand, being miles inland doesn't mean you're totally in the clear with storm surge.
Especially with a place like Tampa Bay. You've got, millions of people living there. What kind of impact are we talking about if the surge actually reaches those predicted levels?
At the very least, massive disruptions. You've got homes, businesses, all that critical infrastructure right there on the coast. A surge like that could easily flood entire neighborhoods, damage roads, bridges, evacuations. Could become almost impossible.
And let's not forget all the folks who depend on those barrier islands. This is their livelihood we're talking about, right in the middle of their busy season. A direct hit from a storm like Helene could be devastating, both personally and for their businesses.
Absolutely. Which is why it's so important that everyone who's in Helene's path is prepared. We've talked about the dangers of the surge, but let's not forget about the flooding from all that rain we're expecting.
Right. Even if you manage to avoid the worst of the wind and the surge, you could still be dealing with flooded streets, basements, power outages, all that fun stuff.
Exactly. And this is where that state of emergency declaration really comes into play. It means Resources are being prepped, shelters are getting ready, and those evacuation orders, those could be coming any time now.
So it's not just a suggestion, it's time to get serious.
Right. 100%. Don't wait until it's too late.
Okay, so we've got the surge, the rain. But there's another big piece of this hurricane puzzle we haven't talked about yet. The wind.
Right, because Helene is still on track to be a major hurricane when it hits.
Yeah.
For those of us who haven't experienced that kind of power firsthand, what are we talking about here? What's it going to be like when Helene really unleashes those winds? Well, imagine you're standing right next to a jet engine, full blast, taking off. That's the kind of raw power we're talking about. With a Category 3 hurricane, Helene could be packing winds up to 115 miles an hour. Strong enough to rip roofs right off, uproot trees, even turn everyday objects into, well, dangerous projectiles.
Yeah, this isn't your backyard barbecue with a little breeze, that's for sure. No frisbees in this wind.
Absolutely not. Window shattering, power lines snapping, even just trying to walk outside becomes a dangerous proposition in that kind of wind. Could knock you right off your feet. No, you definitely don't want to be caught outside doing the worst of it.
So if folks haven't evacuated already and they get the word to go, I'm guessing this means they should take it pretty seriously.
No question about it. And even if you're not in an evacuation zone, remember that wind damage, well, it can be unpredictable. Something as simple as a loose tree branch can become incredibly dangerous in those conditions.
Okay, so we've covered the storm surge, the rainfall, the wind, and I think most importantly, what all of this could mean for the people in Helene's path. For anyone listening who might be feeling, well, a little overwhelmed right now, what's the one message you want them to take away from our depth dive today?
I'd say don't panic, but be prepared. We've thrown a lot of information at you today, but the key takeaway is this. Knowledge is power, especially when it comes to hurricanes. You've listened to this deep dive, you've got the information, now it's time to act. Make sure you've got your emergency plan ready to go, make sure you've got your supplies, and stay tuned to your local authorities for the very latest updates.
That's right, because knowledge without action, well, it doesn't do much good, does it? We've given you the insights, the analysis, the need-to-know information about Hurricane Helene, and now it's up to you to take that information and make the smart, safe decisions for you and your loved ones. Stay safe, everyone.